Welcome to episode 250 of The Way I Heard It. Chuck, it seems like a significant number. It just dawned on me. 250, it's big and it's round and it feels like there ought to be some sort of parade or something.
Well, you know what? I'm going to get right on that. We're gonna have a parade right here in the second bedroom behind me. We're going to bring in the second line,
There will be no parade, there will be no floats, but there will be a really great conversation with a guy I'm eager to introduce you to. His name is Jesse Hagen. He's a genealogist, and he works for the Sons of the American Revolution. What Jesse did for me is kind of amazing. If you follow the Facebook page, you might recall the story. This was, I think, back in 2018. But I was in Louisville, Kentucky, shooting something or maybe giving a speech, and we had scheduled an episode of Returning the Favor in West Virginia. So I chartered a small plane and flew to West Virginia to shoot this episode. And when I landed in West Virginia, I took a selfie next to this tiny little plane that got me there, because it was the kind of plane you look at and you go, maybe I don't need to get there as badly as I thought. Maybe I won't get on the plane. But the plane worked to my delight and surprise. And so I took a picture of it when I got off, and I posted the picture on Facebook. And I said, West by God, Virginia, where I'll be for the next 7 hours returning a favor. And I did that, got back on the plane, flew back to Louisville, got off the plane at a tiny little airport outside of town. And as I was walking toward the terminal, a man stepped from behind a bush and said, Mike Rowe. Now, at the time, we were dealing with some security issues here at MicroWorks. I was dealing with some over-enthusiastic fans. And
I've had a few of those.
Yeah. So it was getting late in the day, and I was rushing back to my hotel, and a man steps from behind a bush with a bag, says, Mike Rowe. I say, yeah. He says, I have something for you.
Oh,
and he puts the bag on the ground and reaches into the bag. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is how it ends, just outside of Louisville. I mean,
either that or you're getting served.
I know, I'm getting served, I'm getting shot. Do I charge him? Do I tackle him? Do I run? There's a lot of,
right.
Fight or flight. But basically, I just stood there and hoped for the best. And what this guy pulled out of his bag was a binder about the size of the old white pages that you probably had at your house, a big, thick book. And on the cover, it read, The Genealogy of Michael Gregory Rowe. And that's when I learned who this guy was. He had offered to do this for me, Chuck, weeks earlier, maybe months earlier. And, I ignored him. He wrote me a nice letter saying, this is what I do. And I ignored him, not to be rude, but because I know how much work it takes to do this. And I didn't want to just ask somebody to do that because they were a fan of dirty jobs. It seems selfish. He did it anyway. He did it anyway. And then he went on my Facebook page and he saw the selfie of me next to the plane. And he zoomed in and found the tail number. And then he called the FAA tracking, whatever it is, identified the plane, identified its location in West Virginia, got a hold of the flight plan, determined where it would be landing outside of Louisville, drove himself to this little airport, and took a position behind a bush waiting for me to get off this tiny little plane. That's who this guy is. So I was delighted that
So basically, it's a stalker. We've got a stalker as a guest on the podcast.
That's right. Except he's a stalker who also is a true fan of MicroWorks and a true fan of dirty jobs and an absolute lover of his chosen vocation, which he describes as a disease, by the way.
Right. That's true.
He's the first to tell you he is a true detective afflicted with going back many generations to help countless people not only understand their families better, but to connect them with soldiers from the American Revolution. That's what he does. And he did that for me. Anyhow, he found me. Scared the hell out of me, jumping from behind that bush. But there's nothing scary about this. Jesse Hagan.
Hello, Mike.
It's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. You're in Louisville, I take it?
Louisville, Kentucky. It's Derby Day. High Holy Day here in Kentucky.
You know what? I think I saw some back and forth wherein Chuck said you were foregoing a Derby party in order to have a conversation with us. Is that true?
Yes, I'll be there in time for the race. So.
What time exactly do you need to be out of here?
Oh, I've got plenty of time. It's 2 o'clock here. The race is at 6:30, 7 o'clock. They keep moving it.
Yeah, but the parties start around now.
Well, he's already started.
The party has started. This is the party.
I've explained to the listeners already the circumstances that brought us together, but I don't know if I've shown this off before. There it is, man.
Wow. I'm glad you got that. Genealogy has always been a very popular hobby. Even before the internet, there were lots and lots of people doing it. I think I heard a few years ago that it was the second largest hobby behind gardening.
Mm-hmm.
There were lots of people who were doing it. It just made it easier for us to come together and share. One of the early things that I did, I belonged to a society called the Society of Marylanders Who Came to Kentucky. In 1991, when I went to one of these meetings, it's a 3-day meeting, we get together, and back then we would put a table, everybody would have a table, and they'd put a sign on it. And the sign would have the names that they're researching. And around the room, they would have 3 or 4 copy machines, and people would come in and bring their boxes and set them on the table. And you'd look over and say, "Oh, he's got a Bevan." And you'd run over to the table and say, "What do you have on Joseph Bevan?" And they'd root through their folders, and they'd grab it, and they'd hand it to each other, and you'd run over to the copy machine, and you'd make copies of it. And you just learn to share everything. And most genealogists are very happy to share everything they have.
Oh, well,
So,
I can vouch for that. You jumped from behind a bush holding the story of my life as I was trying to exit a small airport in Louisville. Scared the hell out of me because, as I think I wrote on Facebook, there's a fine line between a stalker, a detective, a fan, and a genius. And it took me a minute to figure out which category you were in.
He's got a little mix of all of them, doesn't he?
I'm not dangerous. I just like what I do.
Well, you're a dog with a bone.